clear intentions have very little effect on the nature of reality. Most people don't know that they're moving in and out of the quantum field 7.8 times per second. That you're vibrating in and out of the field all the time, and every time you leave, you disappear, and when you come back, you disappear into that field of information, and you come back with information. But if you go out as the same person, you don't bring any new information back. Are you with me? If you look at quantum physics, the physics of possibility, it's really talking about the spiritual aspect of ourselves, because you couldn't explain a miracle, you couldn't explain a biological process, you couldn't explain a simple healing of a cut at this point without understanding the quantum model of reality. And that there are particles, which are matter, it's you and I, and everything in this physical world, and then there's energy. And that energy has a consciousness, it has an awareness, and that energy is a field of information that we are an extension of, that we have access to. And that we spend so much of our life looking outside of ourselves instead of looking inside of ourselves. And that we are really conditioned to look just for particles and matter instead of energy and information. And truly, when people reach the end of their beliefs or they're facing crisis in their life, that's the moment they start to turn within and start to ask the bigger questions. And if you were astute enough to look at this in moments of contemplation, if you were wanting to hide God anywhere, it would be a good place to hide. It would be within the human being.
The Bible, whether or not it's the Word of God, the Bible says that God is the Word, and words are spells. Names have a lot of power and a lot of significance, and they've actually been established over history to serve a certain purpose. And a lot of times we can see their origins are hidden in plain sight. And so spend a little time going down that rabbit hole. But ultimately, if the Word is God and God is the Word, well, what is the Word? The Word is thoughts. And the difference between thoughts and actions, actions is like the universe and everything that is, and the thought would be all the potential of what could be. And once the potential of what could be, like the action would be, or what is everything we know. It's the universe. And the thought would be God, which is everything that's possible. And so the thought, our ability to think and speak things into existence, means that we're all gods in our own right. And so we have to be conscious of what we think and what we say and what we speak into existence, what we manifest, because God is the Word. You are the Word in motion. You are the universe becoming the manifested universe, experiencing itself, and it's going to continue experiencing itself, manifesting things into existence until there's been so much manifested that it is greater than the potential of what could be, at which point the universe, known and unknown, the potential and manifest universe, collapses in on itself and to the infinitely smallest point with absolutely nothing else. And then, boom, Big Bang starts going again. The universe starts to experience itself first as one, of course, then the split, or first is zero, then the split into one, which was two, which went to three, and from three went to nine, and from 3 to 9 it goes on forever, or seemingly until it collapses on the weight of its own existence, maybe. There is some end point in history, some point that's maybe, who knows, 1 year to another 27 million years in the future, at which point there's going to be an event that's quote-unquote cataclysmic, but I think it's only cataclysmic because it just so happens to be the last event before the great contraction. And so I don't know what all this means, and I don't know what it means to have spent so much time thinking about it. I've suffered multiple temporary schizophrenic breaks. I've had numerology basically present itself in front of me almost like looking up at the stars, and for some unknown reason being able to make out constellations that were mapped thousands of years ago, and one day you look up and boom, you're able to see that. And so I've had a series of experiences very similar to that. Big one with numerology, which then led me to, of course, linguistics, which is something I've always been very interested in as a, visionary with a dictionary. So I think that ultimately at 28 years old, during my Saturn return and thinking about all this last first 1/3 of my life, it's been a gift and a curse being able to pontificate at such an extreme level. Like, have the potential to get lost in universal truths. I mean, things that there's no disputing. It's not the head side of the coin or the tail side of the coin. It's that thin side of the coin that it never actually lands on its own, but it really is the coin. It's both sides of the coin at once. And so, understanding that will help the next 2/3 of my life, being able to map that out and what it is I want to accomplish, which, it used to be wanting to educate people on what I have found, of course, right? Like a researcher or but at this point, I think if I can enlighten as many people as possible and be as content as possible with myself and bring as much joy, leave more of a positive difference than a negative difference, and raise my son to be the best possible man he can be, and I think the biggest enemy of this creative powerhouse in my head, besides, its potential for self-destruction, its biggest enemy is procrastination, getting in the way of itself. You could have a million golden creative ideas, and if you don't act on any of them, sure, you don't get ahead, but nobody gets the benefit from any of those ideas. And I think eventually the universe, maybe the universe won't stop putting them out there for you, but your ability to tap into them will start to diminish. It's like a muscle. Just like writing. I've been writing so much lately after all this critical thinking and exercising this muscle, of which has also re-inhibited a passion that I once really poured a lot of my self-worth and also my identity into. And so without that, I've been sort of free-floating in this quantum pinball machine for, a few, 3, 4, 5 years maybe, but also doing a lot of learning, and there's been a lot of experiences of which I won't go into now, that I'm very fortunate, blessed, some would say lucky, to be here where I am right now. Peace is what it should be. All right, until next time. Namaste.
He reasoned, well, if we disturb electrons, and him and Planck were doing these experiments, if we disturb these electrons, then they should fall just like an apple falling from the tree towards the nucleus. It should be predictable, just like it's predictable in Newtonian physics and classical physics. Well, when they started disturbing the electrons, something very unusual happened. The electron gained energy, then it lost energy. And it gained energy, and it lost energy. And it gained energy, and it lost energy. And instead of it falling like a ball rolling down a hill, it was like a ball rolling down steps. And all of a sudden, they became very aware that the subatomic world, the very tiny, didn't behave like the very large world. And so then they started to look for the electron. They started to try to measure it. And everywhere they looked for it, it appeared. And when they turned their back on it and they no longer looked to measure it, it went from a particle that collapsed, called collapsing the wave function, back into energy. Now, this was a revolutionary moment, because this meant that subjective mind, your mind, has an effect on the objective world, that mind and matter are somehow correlated. And so this birth of quantum physics came along, And the quantum physics experiments say that you cannot do a quantum physics experiment without an observer around. In other words, a mind always has to be present because it will influence the outcome. You with me? So now, that invisible field of spirit, that invisible field of information and energy, somehow you, as an individual, can influence the nature of reality with your mind. So now, Einstein had a lot of trouble with this because he said, God doesn't play dice and it doesn't work like this, but his brain was wired for light. And so he had the abstraction and he was getting the download of information, understanding the field of light. And the quantum physicists were saying, well, actually, there's a field of information beyond space and time, beyond light, where everything is unified. And you can take two photons that have been somehow related in a specific atom and shoot them to the opposite ends of the universe. And the moment you affect one photon at the exact same time, the other one is affected. So they were being connected or affected in a realm faster than the speed of light. In other words, it would take time if you affected one for the other one to be affected. But if they were beginning to be affected at the exact same time, they were connected in a realm beyond physical reality. Are you with me? And so when the movie What the Bleep came out, and we basically made an effort to show that your mind has an effect on reality, and that in order for you to begin to change your reality, you got to change your mind and change the way you live your life. And we wanted people to become inspired by the process of creation, really give it a shot. And that independent of your gender, of your race, of the color of your skin, of your intellectual ability, independent of your past, independent of your age, that on some level we are all divine creators, and that these models of reality that have separated individuals have all been built on human beings living in a very limited state of mind. And so when quantum physics was born and the whole concept of reality began to unfold, people started to really challenge the nature of reality, and that concept that you are somehow connected because you are made of photons and atoms and electrons, that on some level you are an organization, a community of 70 trillion to 120 trillion cells, and all of those cells are made up of atoms and molecules and chemicals. And all of those are working in a coherent form to express yourself as a physical body. But most people don't know that they're moving in and out of the quantum field 7.8 times per second. That you're vibrating in and out of the field all the time, and every time you leave, you disappear, and when you come back, you disappear into that field of information, and you come back with information. But if you go out as the same person, you don't bring any new information back. Are you with me? And if you can begin to observe a vision that represents a future, and you can hold steadfast to that vision, and you can see that vision clearly in your mind, and every day you understand where you place your attention is where you place your energy, then you would be investing your energy into the future. And the image that you see could literally be the template for trillions and trillions of atoms to organize into patterns of information called an event in your life. And so, but it's not enough to just have a clear intention, because clear intentions have very little effect on the nature of reality. That the driving force that couples the co-maiden, the handmaiden to all of that is an elevated emotion. And so when you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, it is the elevated emotion that begins to amplify the field around your body. And in that moment, you become more energy and less matter. And if you understand then that the emotion then is the handmaiden to the creative process, that means that you would have to feel whole before your healing. That would mean that you would have to feel abundance before your wealth. That means you would have to feel awe before the mystical moment. That would mean you'd have to feel love before your new relationship. That would mean you'd have to feel empowered before your success. And that means then when we do this properly, then we're no longer functioning as materialists. We are literally function as quantum minds. And only when you're truly conscious and truly aware are you beginning to affect the nature of reality. and taking small moments in your busy life to understand that when your consciousness merges with a greater consciousness, when you're connected to Source, you will emulate the divine. And how would the divine live if it was you? Thanks for listening.